So let's have a go. Okay, 10 and 35. I already wrote them out for you as prime factors, as a product of prime factors, because the aim of this lesson, I assume that you can do this now, and this is something that we've done in the previous lesson and we've given you a chance to do in the STAR activity, but the objective of this lesson isn't to write a number as a prime factor decomposition and write a number as a product of prime factors. The objective of this lesson is to use find the highest common factor, lowest common multiple. So I've given you this. Okay. In the exam, in fact, some of the questions they will also give you this and ask you for the highest common factor, lowest common multiple from the representation, which will be given. Okay, let's begin. 10 and 35. So what would be the highest common? I like to start with the highest common factor because I think the highest common factor is easier to do. So in this case, highest common factor for the first one, I believe, would be, are there primes in common? Yes. Include only the primes in both numbers. So I don't want to include 2. I don't want to include 7. I only want to include the primes that are in both numbers for the highest common factor, and the highest common factor and the prime that's in both numbers is 5. So it doesn't appear more than once. So I don't need to pick large or smaller because it's 5 to the power of 1 and 5 to the power of 1. Okay. So in that case, highest common factor would just be equal to 5. The lowest common multiple, I think, is a bit trickier. Okay, so lowest common multiple, I'm going to write that here. I think it's a bit trickier. So lowest common multiple then will be all of the primes. It says here include the primes from both numbers. So I need to have a 2. I need to have a 5. I need to have a 7. I don't need to choose whether I need to pick this a larger one because the 5s pair with the both same power. So here, 2 times 5 times 7 would be the lowest common multiple using that representation. And if you can follow these rules, this is a much easier way to find the highest common and lowest common multiple of numbers, especially when the numbers get very large. And that is just going to be 5. Okay. Okay, the next one then. Let's look at that one. So I'm going to start again with the highest common factor, because I think the highest common factor is a slightly easier one to do, because you're looking at the numbers in both. So, look, this is a similar case. 2 is not in both, so I'm not concerned with the 2. 11 is not in both, I'm not concerned with the 11, but the 5 appears in both. But they have different powers. What does it say you do? If a prime appears more in one number, so that's appearing 5 times 5, so multiplied by itself twice, so there's a power of 2 here. Use a smaller amount. So in this case, if this is the 2 primes I have to choose between, either power of 1 or power of 2, it says choose the smaller one. So highest common factor in that case would be 5. That's the biggest factor that's in both. 5 is a factor of both, and that's the biggest one that's in both. Okay. And if you just think about it for a second, what is 5 squared? 25. 25 is definitely not in both. So 5 is in both. So, okay, lowest common multiple then. So there's 2. I'll pick the 2, of course. I would pick the 5. But there's 5 squared and a 5. So the lowest common multiple says use the larger amount if there's the same prime but appears more in one than the other. So you pick the larger one for the lowest common. Remember the opposite of that. Lowest common multiple, pick the larger. So lowest common multiple, I'll pick 5 squared. Times by. And then you have to include all the primes for this one. So times by 11. Okay. Okay. 2 times 5 squared is actually 110. So 110 will be the lowest common multiple. You don't even have to write down all the times tables, etc. You can just work it out from the primes, and this is good when the numbers get large. Okay, the next one is an interesting one, quite a small representation: 2 squared and 3 squared. So we'll start with highest common factor. Highest common factor then will be what's in both. There's nothing in both, because there's 2 squared here and 3 squared here, so there is no prime. That's a 2 and that's a 3. That's 2 times 2 and that's 3 times 2. There is no prime that's repeated in both. What happens in this case? Highest common factor has to be 1. Okay, highest common factor is 1. That is the largest number that's in both. There is no other common factor that's in both, so 1 will be the highest common factor. The lowest common multiple in this case would be Well, you have to include that. You include all the primes, and there's no repetition, so it's just going to be 2 squared times by 3 squared. In fact, that's multiplying the two numbers together. That is that number. That's it. That is that number. So there's no primes in common. The lowest common multiple. You just multiply the number. Correct. And highest common factor will be 1.